Okay. Well, I'd like to welcome someone who's very dear to me and has earned her way into that space. And hey, Jessica, I was just introducing our guest. It's always like 2 minutes after the hour.
Yeah, here come people.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I was just getting ready to introduce our guest. I want you to know that I'm going to leave space for you all to ask your own questions of Amy, but I met Amy more than a year and a half ago. I was on a wellness retreat with my daughter, and Amy was working at a place called Canyon Ranch, and there was an offering of energy work, Chinese energy work, and I signed up for Chinese acupuncture for an acupuncture euphoria experience. And who doesn't want to be euphoric? That was appealing to me, even though the needles weren't. I finally felt brave enough to try that. And I know that there was an interview and a conversation ahead of that. And that's when I first met Amy. And I walked into Amy's office for the let's talk about, your life and where your energy is, and immediately started sobbing. I don't know if you remember that, Amy, but I was just unloading all this stuff around being an entrepreneur, being a mediator. I don't even think it was personal so much as it was business related at that time. But the reason that happened for me, because the part of me that's the mediator is watching me, right? Realizing that Amy had created a space like we created mediation, a space that opens safety, if you will, that just truth comes out. And to sit in that space and watch that happen, uh, to be in that space myself with somebody I hadn't even met before was pretty incredible. So, um, I did the acupuncture and indeed had a euphoric experience. It was weird. I couldn't even sleep that night. I do not know what happened. It was magic. My daughter and I went back a year later and I tried another energy balancing thing with Amy, and I had the same experience. I walked into her office, I started unloading, all this stuff that I didn't even know was pent up in me, and had the same experience. She was holding a space that was so safe and non-judgmental and open. And then I knew that she was magical. Hey, Jen, great to see you.
Hi.
Um, so I learned more about the places where my energy was affecting my own life, and one of those was around the business building part, being a mediator, being an entrepreneur, and all the fears and all the stuff that comes with that. So I started working with Amy. Um, and then I just asked her to come and give you all an opportunity to understand a little bit more about energy work and hear from an energy expert. Um, so, Amy, first starting off, why don't you tell us a little bit about what energy work is, how it's related to it's a Chinese magic, and how you got into doing this?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much. So, it is interesting because I think this is one of those things that people approach from lots of different backgrounds and lots of different reasons. And so my first sort of jumping into the world of energy medicine was through Chinese medicine. And it was because of an experience I had receiving Chinese medicine. So for me, most people who grow up in the Western world typically don't seek out alternative or energy medicines until you absolutely have to, right? It's almost the last resort. So something isn't working well, you want another option. And so, that's where we kind of start. And that's where I started. So I started getting acupuncture when I was in grad school. And I, like you, actually was not very excited about the needle aspect of it. But I had had irregular menstrual cycles and was looking for other options to treat that and saw that acupuncture was a possible way to treat it. So I thought, what the heck? I can be open-minded and I'll give it a try. And I'll still admit firsthand, I've never loved the needle part of it, but I got really just drawn into the holistic nature of it. They weren't just treating like a subsection of my physical body. They were, it was questions about everything, different issues, maybe digestion or pain, but also, how are your emotions? What gets you upset, things like that. And so in the beginning, it was very strange to me, but it was sort of like going down the rabbit hole, and little by little, I just got drawn to different modalities, different ways of looking at the system holistically. Trained in a few different energy modalities, some mind body modalities. Um, and just find it all incredibly fascinating. And also, despite the fact that it's this intangible aspect that we can't see, hear, taste, touch, right? Our physical senses don't necessarily have access to it. It's still a huge part of our world, our existence, and it impacts just about everything that we do.
Yeah, so let's talk about energy more because I 100% didn't appreciate as I was younger, but definitely believe that there is this. Well, we know there's different kind of energies that we can't see, but the energy we know emotions are contagious. Um, I think what the thing I haven't realized is kind of we. I think the wording you used at one point was not that we get back what we put out energy wise, but to a degree we do. Talk about that kind of energy maybe and what we do know about its existence and
I
yeah.
mean that one's been around, I think, forever. To me, it relates to the golden rule, right? It's the idea of karma for some cultures. It's, become more popular in the last few years with the concept of like law of attraction and, manifestation. And the way that I look at it from an energy practitioner perspective is that everything really has an energy. And so it's almost like, if you throw a little rock into a body of water, you see that ripple. So we all kind of have our own ripple that we are giving off. And then the theory of that, what you put out comes back to you, is that it's like a like attracting like. And so in that mindset, it's what are we giving off? Are we aware of it most of the time? Do we have any sense that we can adjust it if need be? And I think most of us in our culture, because looking at these intangibles isn't what our go-to really. We don't necessarily always have a sense of how is my feeling affecting this situation, that situation, right? And like you say, it's if you look at it as nothing else but contagious, right? What you bring into the room is going to affect someone else and vice versa. And so are we just letting ourselves get sort of pulled and drawn into the strongest wave in the room? Or are we able to set our energy and our intention the way that we want it so that we can not control the room, but just have more direction in what plays out?
Maybe not control the room, but also not be controlled by the room.
Exactly,
which
exactly.
is which is kind of the hard thing now, right? Because there's just a wave of it seems like so much negativity and so much anger and especially when you're in I don't know how many people here are mediators, but when you're a mediator, you're in conflict and I know a lot of mediators approach it from a different way. Some of them sometimes get a feel ahead of time whether or not it's going to work. And I feel like coming in with the energy of hope that I always believe that there's a potential for a better outcome.
Hmm.
Um, and I've had people say afterwards that, you believing in us is why it finally happened. I mean, I do find so much truth in the energy that we put out
Hmm.
does create. Not necessarily a happy ending, because I don't think we have that much power, but certainly better choices of a better
Yeah.
ending. So I think in that involves preparation, right? Like I have to prepare. And I was telling you before we started, for me, before every mediation, I have a ritual. And before any time I'm hosting something like this, a dialogue or something, and I ask the universe, just for me, the word universe works for grace, wisdom, and to stay out of my own way.
Hmm.
And when I told you that, you laughed because I do think, I'm the person who gets in my way the most, and that can be with my own expectations or especially with whatever self-talk, my own pressure, and particularly fear.
Hmm. Yeah.
Tell me how you work with people around those kind of things.
Yeah. So this is, again, this is one of those ideas and concepts that I feel like, we sometimes call it New Age, but it really has been around forever, as far as I understand. And in Chinese medicine, the way that it was explained is there's the qi, which is the energy or the vital force, not only of the system but of everything, right? It's present in the earth, in the air, everywhere. And there's this idea that the energy kind of guides the physical reality, but the underlying thing that's guiding the qi they call the yi, which is the intellect. So it's the idea that thought precedes everything. So what you do with your thought is incredibly important. And, we've talked about this before in that where your focus is, so that's your thought, your energy is going to follow, and then the physical, ramifications are going to follow that. So, approaching something with a mantra like that is letting go, which helps energy flow more, which creates that space that you're talking about, right? It's an intangible thing. How do you describe to somebody that you sat in a room with one person and you felt completely safe to just open up versus another person who you just were like, I don't want to tell you anything, right? There's nothing physical there that you can point out. It was because of this or because of this. It's just an energetic openness that gets established based on the energy, that the person's bringing in. And it's contagious, like you say. So when we're working with our own sort of limiting energetics, if you will, which can be beliefs we were raised with, or just the experience we had previously that's now following us into the next experience. Those can be a little bit trickier to work with because energy does have momentum. So it kind of naturally builds on itself. So some people, mantras are great, but some people will tell me, okay, I started doing this mantra about prosperity because I know I have blocks around income. And the more I did it, actually, the worse I felt rather than feeling like, oh, income is now, building. And it's because it's not specifically the words, it's the energy or the feeling of them, right? So if you say a mantra like money flows to me, but that triggers in your mind the idea of I've been in debt for years and years and I have all this stuff to pay off, then even though you're saying these words, your energy is focused on the lack or the fear, right? Or the difficulty. And so that momentum is building. So mantras and focused thought can work and it can be very helpful. But if your own system kind of has this built up momentum, then that can either just take some time to overcome, or that's where the energy work that we've been doing and I've been learning through the years, it's almost like it just helps stop that momentum or at least slow it down. And I think you and I have both had the experiences of it's really hard to explain to somebody why you feel different after an energy balance. And it's like the logic is still the same,
Hmm.
but something lets go. And that's that built up momentum through the years. So I value both. I think it's important to be aware of your thoughts, aware of your beliefs, understand how your experience and background is informing what's going on in your world. But also, if you get to a point you feel like you're just banging against the brick wall, that's a good time to look into some of these modalities and see if some energy work can help just ease some of that.
It makes me it makes me wonder how much self-awareness has to play a part in being able to, maybe accept the energy work or even I don't know, just the word self-awareness came in mind, so you can take
Hmm.
that from there.
Yeah, I think it's a big part of it. Self-awareness and also willingness to to adjust so that you can feel better. And I think in our culture, that's not something that we've really been, raised to go, oh, like I'm starting to feel really tight, really tense, like I'm frustrated, this isn't working. And is it, is do we say, okay, I'm going to go take a 5 minute break and go outside and stretch and take a few deep breaths, or do we just, oh, I got to keep going, I got to keep working, push, push, push. So it's like we are in our own way most of the time. We are building this energetic momentum, and we don't necessarily A, realize it, like you're saying. Sometimes we don't. And B, sometimes even when we do realize it, we're not necessarily willing to give ourselves the benefit of the doubt. So those two things are big. Sometimes the awareness factor, honestly, is all it takes. Sometimes people have those aha moments of like, oh my gosh, this is the reason why this isn't working. And just that, eases it and lifts it, and it can be enough. So self-awareness is definitely a big part of it, and being willing to, offer yourself that benefit of the doubt.
It seems like our culture is more geared to you need to do something different so that I feel better.
That's a big part of it too. And I think, it seems like the easiest solution, right? Because it's like, I felt fine until you showed up and started telling me this stuff, or started, acting this way, or started being annoying. And so if you stop, I'll feel better. But really, the problem with that, and we've talked about this, is it's never going to stop. You can't possibly get everyone out there to, bend and shift and change enough for you to always feel good. So, it's not to say that it's not important to have open dialogue and to share how you're feeling with other people. But when you depend on somebody else for you to be balanced, you've lost your power, right? We talk about empowerment and being able to be the person you want to be regardless of the circumstances. And so needing somebody else to adjust is a slippery slope for sure.
I like that word, a slippery slope. You said to me once, and I just wrote it down, in most cases, we do have more say in how we feel than we realize. Talk about that some.
Yeah, and I think that does tie in a little bit to what we were just saying, where it's like, well, I can't feel good today because, when I dropped my daughter off at school, she had a tantrum. And so now I'm just wrecked, and the rest of the day is ruined, and I feel like a terrible mother, right? So one thing happens, which is significant in our world. And we then sort of spiral, right? We get into that momentum, and it feels like we have no power over it. But those are really the moments to check in and see, okay, like I feel terrible about this. Is it is it benefiting me or my daughter to remain in this terrible feeling place? Is it benefiting the people I'm going to interact with today? Can I do anything to feel better? Right. And so everybody's different, and everyone's kind of adjustment of how they feel will look differently. But it's this concept of I actually do have the power, right? Because you could sit, if you came from a neutral place and you sat in a room and you closed your eyes and you participated in sort of a relaxation practice of your body. You know, my neck is relaxing, my shoulders are relaxing, and so on and so forth. The power of your thought is going to affect your body. You will begin to relax. You will breathe deeper. You will start to feel better. So it's that acknowledgement that, you know, wherever we are on this scale of emotions, we actually can affect a change if we want to, if we choose to. We often won't or don't, but we do have that power. And it's something I think a lot of people aren't aware that they have that ability within themselves.
I I think that's exactly right. I think that we don't recognize that there's a choice there,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Like it feels stuck. And when
Yeah.
you feel stuck, you can't really see a choice. Is there some trigger or and I mean a trigger in a good way, something we can do to remind ourselves that we have a choice in that moment? Is there some way to learn something? Like for us, it's conflict management tools and learning these tools
Yeah.
basically that help us, that give us options.
Yeah.
So I experience what you do is giving us options in how we feel.
Yeah, and I actually think of it exactly the same way. And I encourage people to put together I call it a well-being toolkit. And it does include specific practices, techniques, and tools that work for you. So, you know, I don't tell people, okay, this is the only way or this is the best way, because I acknowledge A, there are a lot of ways, there are a lot of tools out there, and B, we all respond a little bit differently to different things. Like when I was in school for Chinese medicine, they were teaching us Tai Chi. And Tai Chi is an incredible tool and technique and amazing. And I despised it because I had grown up learning martial arts. And so to me, Tai Chi was so slow and boring. And I was just like, oh, no, I can't. But Qigong is sort of a umbrella term that Tai Chi falls into. And so there are different ways to do Qigong. And I love Qigong. So if someone had said to me, okay, the only way for you to be balanced every day is to do Tai Chi, I would have been like, well, I'm just not going to be balanced. Sorry. So you do have to kind of play with the different tools, right? Some people adore yoga, other people hate it. But you can find things that help you feel more balanced. And, you know, that's one, trusting and learning how you feel and using tools and techniques to adjust it. So, meditation is an option. Again, some people hate it, other people love it. There's so many ways to meditate, and I always tell people there's no right way, there's no wrong way. Find a way that you like if you can. You know, Qigong, all that really is like a slow movement meditation. It's something that I now do every morning, and it's only about 5 to 7 minutes. But when I do that, it's like I've set my dial for the day. And I know I'm going to at least start at this place of feeling good, feeling open, feeling balanced. Exercise is great. The only potential problem with exercise is that our Western idea of exercise is often energy output to a max, which is okay sometimes and not okay sometimes. And it honestly, you kind of have to be willing to adjust, which I think our exercise, you know, just our mindset around it is uh, just do it, right? Go until you're exhausted, which isn't always the best thing for you, but it is good to move the body. It definitely keeps things from being stuck in your system. Um, you know, tapping is another one that has become popular over the last few years. Emotional freedom technique. So that's an energy technique that's helping your system release stuck energy. So there's all kinds of them out there. It's just a matter of acknowledging A, there's worth in these tools and techniques, and B, finding a way to incorporate them when you need them. So again, that self-awareness.
For the people on here, if you have any questions or something in your own life that it's like, maybe whatever it is, feel stuck in something or just have a question about this, please just stick up your hand, and we would love to hear, what you're experiencing and what you're wondering, and what you're maybe hoping to see that could be different. It's so weird to say this. I'm going to say it anyway. When I started doing energy work, first of all, I come from a quite a bit of perfectionism. I want to get it right. And so I work really hard to get it right before I put something out there. And part of that is I have this first do no harm. So I feel like I have to have a level of competence. But the other part is, what if I fail? What if I mess it up? What if I don't do it good enough? Um, and Amy, can you speak to like just energy thoughts around that sort of energy that I'm putting out there
For
when I'm
sure, for yeah. Well, I mean, again, if you look at it in terms of that what you put out is coming back, or is, if your thought has any effect on what you're creating, then it becomes this, right? Your thoughts of this isn't good enough, this isn't perfect, I'm not competent, have an effect on that result happening. So it's challenging because, based on our previous experience, we might have a justifiable reason for thinking that, right? And so it's like, well, I can't not think this because I know like this happened. So of course I would think this. But that's where the idea of the reset and the constant renewal really comes in, and being able to let go of those past experiences, or it may not even be a real experience. It might be just somebody else's words, right? How we were taught, how we were raised. I was raised with this idea of, just sort of be prepared for things not necessarily working out great, right? So it wasn't necessarily fear of failure, but it was just this like lingering sense of, okay, things can go well, but probably at some point it's gonna just get all messed up, right? And so you can see how, over time, those consistent thoughts, you're always focused on what you don't want versus what you do want. And so shifting those is somewhat challenging, again, because of their momentum, but there's so much value in it, because then what you're creating, and again, your intention, right? The difference in how you feel when you set the intention of the words that you said, that your mantra before you enter into a meeting or a conversation, right? Just that shift compared to, oh my gosh, what if I do this wrong? What if I mess up? Right. So if you entered your conversations there, those are going to be completely different conversations than if you enter them with what you're doing. So it's no different in the planning. That's where you do check yourself and you go, okay, I'm getting into a habit of thought that is not benefiting me or what I'm attempting to create. And so the pivoting there is really helpful and important if you can do it.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. So the premise is, and this is can be hard to believe, but it's been my experience that because we can't see this energy, it's hard to actually maybe buy into the fact that there is an energy that other people can feel that
Mm-hmm.
we think we have hidden,
Mm-hmm.
but if it's there, it's there. If it's
Yeah.
there, it's there. So it's kind of setting up for. And one thing I think is that there's a bigger picture, right? Like we only see. I remember you said one time something about we don't judge a tulip bulb for being a flower or not that's not completely bloomed because it's not done. And sometimes we
Mm-hmm.
judge what's going on by an instant result when in fact we can't see the bigger picture for that. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for me, it it goes kind of to, again, our cultural, the way that we look at sort of achievement, and our we're we're going into something because of a result, and I think it's important to have that sense of why am I doing this, right? And it focuses our energy or our work, right? Like I'm I'm working on this because of this specific result that I'm wanting to achieve. Um, but the energy that we put into it and the experience that we have on the way to that result are far more important than the result. And that's where I think we've gotten flip-flopped because
Mhm.
we're so focused on the result and we think, okay, once this is how I want it, right? Again, once the outside yields to how I want it to adjust, I'm going to feel better. So we're lynching all of our good feeling on the result versus on the whole process going into it, right? The
Mhm.
result gives me focus to work on things that I enjoy working on to get to that result. It allows me to interact with people that I enjoy working with, or that challenge me, or that help me to look at things in a different way, or I'm going to learn something as I'm working towards the result. So the result is important, but it's not the whole picture, right? And so when we judge our progress and when we're partway there and we're mad at ourselves, right? Or it's like we're like you say, the tulip, if we're looking at the bulb before it's planted, it's like, oh, that's ugly. And when just the leaves start coming out, we're like, okay, cool, but it's not that great, right? When it blooms, awesome, beautiful, we love it. But that's fleeting. So it's this concept of all of the moments along the way to the end goal are just as important and necessary, and how you feel in each of those steps is also incredibly important, rather than just saving your good feeling until that very last moment.
For the outcome. That's interesting because in mediation, where I say it, I grew up learning it, trust the process, and I had no idea what that meant. But indeed, I have no desire, and I encourage other mediators not to have any desire in the outcome. But if you take care of the process, the outcome will be whatever it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
It's sort of applying that to our life, really. If we take care of how we show up, we can't control the outcome. It's going to be whatever it is, but all we can do is control the process, or to what degree we can control ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And control the process, which is just kind of constant work.
Yeah. And again, from an energetic perspective, if this resonates where what you're putting out is coming back, or that the energy is sort of the precursor to the physical reality that's, you know, going to happen or in process, um, then it's this continued idea that as long as in the moment you have this feeling of progress, or just like you say, like the flow of it or the process is in motion, then the end result is going to have a similar feeling. Versus if you're controlling every little aspect and you're just like pulling and tugging and it's hard and it's effortful, right? You may get to where you want to be in the end, but it's going to have all of that energy tangled into it. So it doesn't give you necessarily what you're looking for, because you can't ever escape that the energetic aspect of what you're bringing to it. So, it's like um, there's a book essentially called Wherever You Go, There You Are. Like you can't escape yourself. So even if you go somewhere else thinking, oh, this will be better, you're bringing all your stuff with you. And eventually, all of that is going to show up wherever you go.
Yeah, yeah, I'm thinking about the word satisfaction comes into mind. So I know like a lot of people are very stressed about their jobs or their families and feel a lot of pressure. And um, yeah, I'm wondering how, if you're brand new to thinking about the energy I'm putting in and you're feeling like you're feeling pressured, what, how do you, I don't even know how to ask the question that I want to ask. Like, what would you say to someone who it
Yeah.
feels like that daily, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think that for me, the easiest way to sort of enter into this type of work, and you don't even have to think of it as energy work, if that just feels so woo-woo and just doesn't resonate at all, totally fine. But you mentioned earlier the self-talk, and that's where I would start, honestly. If you find yourself putting a bunch of pressure to do something a certain way or feeling, super stressed out, take a moment and just see if you can notice the thoughts or the types of phrases that are coming into your mind. And then just start with an easy statement of that feels good to you. So, the things that I'm gonna mention, if they don't feel good to you, then those aren't the statements to work with. But something like, I appreciate myself. I did a lot of really valuable things today. My involvement with this group or this family or these people, it matters. I bring value. So in just saying a few words like that, like again, I'm not thinking about anything specific, but those words, like I can feel this sort of expansiveness happening in my chest. I feel lightness in the space around me. So just that simple self-talk for 30 seconds changes how you feel. So imagine if, instead of if like you're taking the garbage out and the bag breaks and it gets all over and it's disgusting and you start berating yourself like, "Oh, I should have checked it beforehand." Or you start berating your partner, "Why did they leave it like this?" Right. And if that continues for very long, you start to feel terrible, even if it's justifiable, even if it is their fault, you start to feel terrible. Whereas if you can ease that and lighten it and go, okay, I know they didn't do it on purpose, or I didn't do this on purpose. Yes, this mess sucks, but I can clean it up. I don't even have to clean it up right now. I can come back to this when I feel better. And that ease that you give yourself, that space to feel better and to acknowledge that you're doing the best you can. And most of the time, you're doing a really good job. That self-talk is just huge in shifting, right? We are the ones putting most of the pressure on ourselves. And, not to say it doesn't come from other people some of the time, but in general, we are our own worst enemies.
I mean, we kind of are even with each other. And I think, I mean, I raised 5 kids and we're so quick to point out what people do wrong. And so not so quick about pointing out what people do right.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the whole difference between what is right and wrong, you know, or versus just shit happens, pardon my French, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then as to what you said, your analogy with the garbage bag, I'm thinking how we start out with a problem that is a broken garbage bag, and how then it becomes a relationship problem. Then it becomes a
Right.
you're a bad person, I'm a bad person problem. And it
Right.
all started out with just a broken garbage bag, and now it's
Yeah.
this huge pile
Yeah.
of something.
And
One
that's
of the
that
things
momentum. It just kind
it
of,
is. It is. It's a
yeah.
crazy momentum that takes something and makes it so much worse. And I'm like, blame is not a solution. It doesn't matter whose fault it is because that's just a tunnel that doesn't have an outcome. But
Hmm.
if it's just yeah, boy, that sucked. The bag broke and now I have a mess to clean up. But the mess is cleaned up and then you forget about it as opposed to
Sure.
the damage we do by there's a book, I know I'm in there somewhere, which I had my daughters read. I read it years back. And the one thing that she talked about so much resonated. I know I'm in there somewhere. It's like finding your internal self in a place where you're trying to meet everybody else's needs and be all the things you're supposed to be. But the thing that really resonated for her with me was the self-talk. And it
Hmm.
was it was the question being when you find yourself talking to yourself in a certain way, would you talk to your best friend like that?
Yeah.
And probably not, or we wouldn't have best friends, right? So it's like catching yourself in that moment. And I ask people, I ask clients, what would you say if it were your best friend doing the exact same thing that you did.
Mhm.
And it's usually it'll be okay or it's not a big deal. I mean, usually, right? But it's such a habit to be so hard on ourselves.
Yeah.
Someone asked a question, how about ongoing psychosomatic symptoms related to energy? Can you speak to that, Amy?
Yeah. So this is a big place where energy work and even thought work can be helpful. One of my favorite books on this subject is called Healing Back Pain by Dr. John Sarno. And he was an MD who was treating back pain, and after years of, doing conventional approaches, he came to the conclusion that the majority of his patients, their pain, they had physical pain. So it's real pain. It's not like you're making it up, but the root of it was emotional. And his cure, and he used that word, was for people to every day write down a statement to the effect of, I accept all of my emotions. They're all okay for me to feel. I'm safe. I can express emotions safely if I choose to. And then if they wanted to, he would encourage them just to write down some of the emotions they felt during the day, not to analyze them, not to figure out why they were feeling them, but just to flip a switch in their psyche of these emotions are not bad, these emotions are not good. I don't have to hide these emotions, all of them are okay. And within about 2 to 8 weeks, he said 80 to 90% of his patients' pain was gone and didn't come back. So he did through the years extend that to other things besides pain. He felt like, our cultural acceptance of some emotions and denial of others was causing the body to sort of distract us in a way. So look at something else rather than look at these emotions that are not okay. So that's a practice that I really encourage. I think it not only benefits, you know, symptoms in the body, but it just helps you really be okay with whatever comes up. This is an emotion. We look at emotions as energy. They're waves of energy. And so they come and they go. So it just helps the system, not get so stuck on any specific thing as being, oh, I have to push this away, or I can't process this, and it kind of retrains the brain for how to deal with some of those things. So that's one of my favorite techniques for dealing with the psychosomatic issues.
I have a quote that I use in when I'm teaching understanding conflict, and it is, I can't remember who said it, but I love this quote. It's, we are not rational beings with emotions. We are emotional beings who can only be rational when our identities, as we see them, are seen and valued by others. Is that not beautiful?
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
and
and
the
that's.
whole, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say that's it's very indicative of that, the perspective, which isn't always easy to explain, share, or understand. But even if you don't understand, my husband and I we're still in the process of having this conversation, right? Because when you're dealing with the next generation issues, it's so easy to go, oh, well, I don't understand why they're doing that. Like, you know what? I don't understand either, but I can still be open, honor, accept their right from their perspective to want and feel what they're wanting and feeling. So, yeah, I think there's so much value in that.
I think one of the things you said in what the doctor suggested was saying I have these emotions and it's safe to feel them. I wish that were true. I think what most people's experience is it's not safe. Like we're mostly, I think, raised with don't show emotions. Emotions are bad.
Hmm.
I was in a 20-year marriage where anger was bad. It
Hmm.
was bad. And anger is not bad. It's part of being human.
Right.
But what you talk about is if you can't express these emotions, it's going to have somatic, it's going to have body effects. It's like holding on to toxins. When in fact, it's like normalizing conflict. Conflict's not bad. It's if we shine a light on it and understand it and let it be something that happens for now, but find a better way forward. Same with
Hmm.
emotions. And anger doesn't give you permission to punch somebody, but if learned how to do manage I don't even like the word manage your emotions, but maybe I don't even know what a better word is. Um,
I think
Understand them and recognize the
experience.
needs, experience them, yeah,
Yeah, it's
without
like,
causing harm to other people,
yeah,
but holding the space for people to feel. Yeah, go ahead,
yes.
Amy.
If we think about, when we find something funny and we feel that wave and we laugh, right? It's not like we're stuck in laughter for an hour. It's a very short-lived experience. And so if we are able to express the emotion in the moment, it comes and it goes. Again, it's a wave of energy. But like you say, we're mostly encouraged, right? Our culture has identified certain emotions as okay to express and others are not. And so that's what we've learned. And so then yes, we find ways of dealing with that. We find ways of not expressing what we're feeling in the moment. And so, the that writing it down, I do encourage people, if you can express your emotion in the moment, that is the best thing for your whole system. So it just isn't always possible in the society that we live in. Most people, even if they accept that their emotions are okay, they still don't necessarily want to start crying in the middle of the grocery store. Some people do, whenever I see people really expressing themselves in the moment, I'm so awed and like amazed because I'm not there yet. But that writing it down at the end of the day is a way to express it, right? There are other ways to express it. If you got really angry and you couldn't let it out because it was in the middle of a situation where you couldn't just yell, you can go home and get a pillow and just punch, punch, punch until you're worn out. And that's expressing it. So there's definitely, you know, ways that are healthy and safe. And ultimately, I think that is a shift that we need to experience culturally, but it does start individually. So, we can't make the other person accept our emotions, but we can sit with them and we can allow ourselves to feel what we need to feel. And that's really where it starts.
And let other people sit with their discomfort is the opposite
Exactly.
side of
And
that.
that's huge too. Yeah, not requiring other people to be okay with it, being okay with their discomfort. And that
Hmm.
passes too, and that's important. I think,
Hmm.
it's another thing we tend to focus on. Oh, that's what I did is gonna affect the situation forever. And that's very
Hmm.
rarely the case.
Yeah, we've had some conversations about this. This came into my head, and I'm thinking that my energy coach, Amy, would say if it comes from a place of love to go ahead and express it. But in talking about, so I'm going to say it, but in talking about emotions and what we're allowed to express and not express, I think particularly the what we've put on men, and I'm Raymond aware that you're the only man in the room here, which is why I think I worked with men. I've had seasons of working with different people, and when I worked with men, when I was working in divorce, um, I felt like, my job, I was like making grown men cry. But it was the most beautiful, honored, sacred thing, really, because they came into my office and I met with people separately before I brought them together. And women often have a network of people where we can share, at least verbally, if not emotionally, whereas men just don't have that place. And I can hold a place where, I mean, I love people, right? And I've felt everything and I've come from a pretty trauma background. So, I get life is complicated and I don't know. But asking the questions and giving people the space to express emotions like you did for me when I walked into your office and seeing them show what's locked up inside and knowing that they don't have an opportunity to hardly ever do that. I mean, that's the highest form of intimacy. And my counselor friend says because the word intimacy means into me see, which means seeing the human being inside of there.
Mhm.
And I think it shifts. That includes emotions, right? That includes our mess ups because our mess ups are all, what do you say about mess ups? Like, I'll let you speak to what mess ups are because somehow we think, you and I were talking about this before the talk began, we're supposed to get it right the first time, all the time. And we expect other people to get it right too, which is the sad part. Talk about that for
Yeah,
a
yeah. I
moment.
think that kind of goes back to the process versus the result. And we get so hyper focused not only on getting to the end goal, but on it being perfect or on doing it right and, not making any mistakes. And we forget that the mistakes are, how we learn and how we grow. And, I've used the analogy of, again, it's the self-talk. Like if we're looking at a little kid learning to walk, and they stand for the first time and then they fall down, we don't say to them, "Oh, get up, you dummy, you didn't do it right," right? We're not angry with them. We're excited about every step of the along the way when they first stand up, when they're teetering, when they fall down. We find all of it enjoyable and interesting because we understand that they're experiencing this new thing, they're learning. Every fall helps them to kind of tweak and get better and, learn how to keep their balance. But for some reason, when we reach a certain age or stage, we just expect, oh, I should know better. I think that statement, it's entered my mind so often through the years. I know enough now that I shouldn't do that. That shouldn't happen anymore. And I think it's that giving ourselves grace, understanding that every day really is a renewal. And even if you're doing tasks and things that you've done before, right, this is a new moment. You're a new you entering this moment. And so when you give yourself that grace, you make a mistake, it allows you to go, oh, maybe I should try it differently. Or maybe I wasn't feeling great and I should take a break. Or it's like, rather than beating up on ourselves for the mistake, it's understanding that, perfection is not really part of this journey, I don't think. I think it's again just the experience of the moments, doing the things and giving ourselves that space to just be in it rather than do it a certain way.
I know you're not saying to fix how we feel. I know that's how do you frame that? Rather than
Yeah,
fix how
yeah, and
we
that's
feel,
yeah,
change
I'm
how we
glad
feel.
I'm glad you
Yeah.
said that because I think, yeah, it could be easy to go, oh, well, if I'm upset with myself, that's wrong, right? And so it's like I should again, I think it's just this honoring the fact that it's that perspective shift and it's not even about feeling perfect all the time. It's accepting that how I feel about this right now is okay, even if it's upset, unhappy, unsatisfied, right? That allowing thing just opens up so much, and you can move through it then a little bit easier. So for me, it's less about you have to feel a certain way all the time and just more about honoring the flow of it, and it's a constant flow and it shifts and it moves And it's, there's ups and downs. It's just like the seasons. It's never supposed to be summer all the time. It's never supposed to be winter all the time. And if you're in the middle of winter and you're mad about it being winter, does that do you any good? So you can be. Of course, I'm not going to say you have to be happy that it's winter, but it's just this understanding of, you know, I can adjust if I want to. I don't have to. And it's each of our kind of prerogative really of what we want to bring to the moment.
But the understanding of that, whatever it is we're bringing to the moment is going to affect other people and our outcomes.
It can't, yeah, I mean it's that kind of understanding that how we feel, you know, and it's always a mixed bag. That's the other thing, right? We're not ever gonna just be all one thing all the time for very long. We get distracted, we've got a lot going on, we have a lot of different interests. So I try to think of it as like the majority of how I feel versus a constant, I have to feel a certain way. It's like in general, am I able to feel in the space, in the place that I want to? It's also the ability to balance and to recover, and to, again, what we kind of came into this with of not feeling out of control all the time, like we're at the whim of everyone else, right? Of having a sense of, oh, I get to set my dial. I don't have to let everyone else tune me where they want me.
Before we started this, I told you that I ran across something or something came across my phone after my own. I do transcendental meditation. Don't fight darkness, bring the light, and the darkness will disappear. I thought that was beautiful because it can feel like sometimes now I think that we're fighting darkness or supposed to fight darkness or supposed to fight when we feel dark,
Hmm.
right? But it's not fighting the darkness, it's bringing the light and the darkness will disappear. And I think that's the summary of what the energy work does is to bring the light. Um, I don't know if that means when it's appropriate or when it's time or when we're ready, but to recognize that choosing light is an option, I think
Yeah,
is,
I think so too. And it's also, I think, very indicative of this. And again, in our culture, we tend to think I have to do more, I have to try harder, I have to effort for my outcome. And when we're trying to feel better energetically, we're just limiting the ability for the energy to flow, right? We're fighting the darkness versus when we let go, even if you don't focus on the light, but you just let go and you allow the light is, someone once said, if you look at kind of the universe, there's no switch for darkness, right? There's the light, and darkness is the absence of the light. So to try to fight against it, right? Again, it's much harder work than just letting in the light, for sure.
yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Any last 1 minute comments or summary you want to give, Amy?
Well, and feel free to reach out too if you think of something later. Um, I always love these conversations and talking about this stuff, so I'm happy to field questions or comments in the future as well.
And I'll send Amy's email out to all of you and her website as well. So you can reach out if you have more thoughts. And thank you all for joining us. It's very, very good to almost see you all. Um, and yeah, I love that I get to meet such wonderful people and can share, them and their perspective with you and whatever resonates with you and hopefully helps give your day some light. Yeah, thank you all for coming.